Hello everybody, my name is Zeke, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about books that have come out this decade that I have not read yet that I really should read and want to read. So this video specifically is a follow-up to the last video I did where I talked about my favorite books from this decade that I've read that were published in this decade, and making that video really made me think of how bad I am at reading new releases and made me reflect on other books from the past few years that I've maybe wanted to read or heard about and just never got around to. So I wanted to make this video, which is technically a TBR. These are books I want to read, but I don't have like specific plans to like read them anytime soon. They're not like immediately on my list, but they're just things that I want to keep in mind for the future, and just wanted to kind of remind myself of all these books. So I'm just going to go through them. If you see me glancing down, it's because I am reading descriptions. The first book I want to read came out, I think, last year and was everywhere. I literally couldn't escape it, and that's The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. I forget what award specifically it won. It might have been the Booker Prize. It is very well loved and it's very long, and so I think it'll definitely be a journey when I decide to pick it up. The description of the book is: the Barnes family is in trouble. Dickie's once lucrative car business is going under, but rather than face the music, he's spending his days in the woods, building an apocalypse-proof bunker with a renegade handyman. His wife Imelda is selling off her jewelry on eBay, while their teenage daughter Cass, formerly top of her class, seems determined to binge drink her way through her final exams. And 12-year-old PJ is putting the final touches to his grand plan to run away from home. Where did it all go wrong? A patch of ice on the tarmac, a casual favor to a charming stranger, or a bee caught beneath a bridal veil? Can a single moment of bad luck change the direction of a life? And if the story has already been written, is there still time to find a happy ending? So I'm very interested in this book because I think that the character work and the work with the relationship between all these family members is going to be very well done. So I'm just very excited to spend time with well fleshed out characters. Also, I think that this book is going to get pretty heavy and pretty deep, and I think that's definitely something I like in books just generally. So I definitely want to pick this up, and also because I know so many people have loved it, I'm sure that even if it doesn't end up being like a favorite, I will get a lot out of it. So definitely excited to read that at some point in the future. So the next book I'm going to talk about is A Complete Left Turn. It's a fantasy book that came out, I think, in 2022, and that's The Will of the Many by James Islington, maybe Islington. There's an S in there. I don't know if you pronounce the S or not. This book, when it came out, I heard a lot of people talking about it in kind of the fantasy sphere, and a lot of people are really, really loving it. It has great reviews, and I think the author released another series in the past that was well liked, but then this came out and everyone was raving about it, and so it definitely like flew to the top of my list at that point, and then I never got around to it. So in this book, the Katanan Republic, the hierarchy, may rule the world now, but they do not know everything. I tell them my name is Viz Telemus. The names are going to get me. I'm pronouncing them wrong. It is what it is. I tell them I was orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and that good fortune alone has led to my acceptance into their most prestigious school. I tell them that once I graduate, I will gladly join the rest of civilized society in allowing my strength, my drive, and my focus, what they call will, to be leached away and added to the power of those above me, as millions already do, as all must eventually do. I tell them that I belong, and they believe me. But the truth is that I have been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that may tear the Republic apart, and that I will never, ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. To survive, though, I will have to rise through the academy's ranks. I will have to smile and make friends and pretend to be one of them and win. Because if I cannot, then those who want to control me, who know my real name, will no longer have any use for me. And if the hierarchy finds out who I truly am, they will kill me. So I just think that the premise is very engaging, very exciting. It's kind of a school type story, but magical school type story, but also there's a lot more political intrigue going on, and I love political intrigue in my fantasy books. So what excites me about this book is there's another fantasy series that I started reading a while ago at this point, called Borrowed Cormorant. I don't know the actual name of the series, but all the books have the main character's name in it, Borrowed Cormorant. And it's kind of a similar-ish about a woman who kind of infiltrates an empire after her community is basically overrun by the empire, and she's kind of trying to take it apart from the inside. But with that, I got through the second book and I really loved the first book, and the second book really disappointed me, so I was kind of very let down. So I'm hoping that this will give me kind of maybe a similar type of story, just executed maybe a little better, and so I'm excited to definitely read that at some point as well. The next book I'm going to talk about is Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. In this book, Franny Stone has always been the kind of woman who is able to love but unable to stay. Leaving behind everything but her research gear, she arrives in Greenland with a singular purpose: to follow the last Arctic terns in the world on what might be their final migration to Antarctica. Franny talks her way into a fishing boat, and she and the crew set sail, traveling ever further away from shore and safety. But as Franny's history begins to unspool, a passionate love affair, an absent family, a devastating crime, it becomes clear that she is chasing much more than just the birds. When Franny's dark secrets catch up with her, how much is she willing to risk for one more chance at redemption? I'm excited to read this because this is another book that I've just heard wonderful things about. I think it's a very reflective book, very contemplative book, very character-focused book. All of those things are things that I really like to read about, and so I think this is right up my alley. I'm expecting it to be kind of slower, and I'm more than okay with that. And this has been on my radar for a while. I've just never really gotten around to it. So definitely something that I'm happy to be reminded of and that I hope I can pick up soon. Next book I want to talk about, I actually completely forgot about it. That's Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This is another one that when it came out, I heard a lot about it, and then kind of conversation just died down as it does when things are no longer super new, and it kind of fell off my radar for a while, and I was recently reminded of it, and I just think that the description is very up my alley. Blindsided by her mother's sudden death and wrecked by a recent love affair, Casey Peabody has arrived in Massachusetts in the summer of 1997 without a plan. Her mail consists of wedding invitations and final notices from debt collectors. Former child golf prodigy, she now waits tables in Harvard Square and runs a tiny, moldy room at the side of a garage where she works on the novel she's been writing for 6 years. At 31, Casey is still clutching onto something nearly all of her old friends have let go of: the determination to live a creative life. When she falls for two very different men at the same time, her world fractures even more. Casey's fight to fulfill her creative ambitions and balance the confining demands of art and life is challenged in ways that push her to the brink. So I'm just excited to get this, what I assume is going to be a very focused character portrait of this woman who is kind of going through a lot and experiencing a lot and having a lot of complicated thoughts about her life, about the people around her, about creativity and living a creative life. That seems like a big part of this book. It really just seems like a very apt description of the literary fiction I tend to read, so I think it will be right up my alley, and I'm very surprised I actually haven't read this by now. Next book I've been thinking about for a while, and this is something that never really goes off my radar, and I'm unsure. I'm always unsure about whether I should actually read it or not, but as time goes on and I just think more and more about how well loved this book is, I feel like more and more I'm supposed to read it at some point. We'll see if it ever happens. The book I'm talking about is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Why I am skeptical, or I guess not skeptical, but why it wasn't necessarily something that piqued my interest immediately, is that it is a retelling of a book I've never read. It's a retelling of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. No plans to read that anytime soon. Definitely no plans to read that before I would read Demon Copperhead, so I just didn't assume it would ever really be something I gravitated towards. However, I think the fact that it is a retelling and yet it gets such rave reviews and it was literally everywhere when it came out makes me feel a little better about picking up, maybe unprepared or not knowing what I'm getting into, because if that many people love it, they obviously haven't all read David Copperfield, so I feel more comfortable that I would enjoy it, especially considering the actual subject matter of the book. Set in the mountains of southern Appalachia, this is the story of a boy born to his teenage single mother in a single wide trailer with no assets beyond his dead father's good looks and copper-colored hair, a caustic wit, and a fierce talent for survival. In a plot that never pauses for breath, relayed in its own unsparing voice, he braves the modern perils of foster care, child labor, derelict schools, athletic success, addiction, disastrous loves, and crushing losses. Through all of it, he reckons with his own invisibility in a popular culture where even the superheroes have abandoned rural people in favor of cities. So I think that even though it is a retelling, it's a modern retelling. It is something that is very relevant to our time, and it's like a 600 plus page book, and if we're going to be focused on this one character, that is something I love. I love really intense character studies over a long period of time. So it really does seem like it is up my alley. And I think at a certain point, I just have to get over my hesitation and actually pick it up. The next book I'm going to talk about is Bliss Montage by Ling Ma. This is a short story collection, and I tend to read a decent amount of short story collections, but I think this year I haven't read as many. But I specifically want to read this one because Ling Ma wrote a book I absolutely love called Severance, and that's kind of a post-apocalyptic, very quiet kind of pandemic story that I really enjoyed when I read it. And this, I hope, kind of gets some of that same energy. I think Severance has such a specific tone and is just helped along so readily by the way Ling Ma writes that I'm excited to kind of see how she writes short stories and see her in a different setting, though I don't think the short story collection has gotten nearly the same amount of praise as Severance did. But anyways, the kind of description of this short story collection, if you can call it that, starts with, what happens when fantasy tears through the screen of the everyday to wake us up? Could that waking be our end? In Bliss Montage, Ling Ma brings us 8 wildly different tales of people making their way through the madness and reality of our collective delusions, love and loneliness, connection and possessions, friendship, motherhood, and the idea of home. From a woman who lives in a house with all of her ex-boyfriends, to a toxic friendship built around a drug that makes you invisible, to an ancient ritual that might heal you of anything if you bury yourself alive, these and other scenarios reveal that the outlandish and the everyday are shockingly, deceptively, heartbreakingly similar. These stories sound very weird to me, and that's the kind of short story I love to read. So I'm hopeful that even though this isn't nearly as maybe well loved as a lot of the other books on this list, it might really work for me. Next book I'm going to talk about is The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. I want to read this because I read A Visit from the Goon Squad, which is her big book, very, very popular, that came out in, I want to say, the early 2000s. And I liked it a lot when I read it. At this point, it has completely left my head. I remember the basic ideas, the basic plot of the book and the basic premise, but I don't remember a lot of specifics at all. But I do remember enjoying it, and my perception of The Candy House is it's related, but it's not a direct sequel to A Visit from the Goon Squad, and it is so many years removed from that, so I am very excited to kind of see how it differs from A Visit from the Goon Squad. So it's 2010, staggeringly successful and brilliant tech entrepreneur Bix Boughton is desperate for a new idea. He's 40 with 4 kids and restless when he stumbles into conversation with mostly Columbia professors, one of whom is experimenting with downloading or externalizing memory. Within a decade, Bix's new technology, Own Your Unconsciousness, that allows you access to every memory you've ever had and to share every memory in exchange for access to the memories of others, has seduced multitudes, but not everyone. In spellbinding linked narratives, Egan spins out the consequences of Own Your Unconsciousness through the lives of multiple characters who paths intersect with over decades. So Egan introduces these characters in an astonishing array of styles, from omniscient to first-person plural to a duet of voices, an epistolary chapter and a chapter of tweets. In the world of Egan's spectacular imagination, there are counters who track and exploit desires, and there are looters, those who understand the price of taking a bite of the candy house. So right away, I kind of noticed similarities to A Visit from the Goon Squad. There's a lot of stylistic choices in there that really vary from the norm, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of stuff like that here. But I do think this premise is very exciting. It seems a lot weirder than A Visit from the Goon Squad, and I hope it leans into that weirdness, but definitely something that seems right up my alley and that I should definitely read at some point. The last book I'm going to talk about is a book that has been on my radar for quite a long time, and that's The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. I read A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, I think in 2022, and gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved it. Not really my typical book, kind of strange, a little preachy, but it really worked for me. And I put this on my list immediately after and just never picked it up. But I feel like I definitely should at some point because I loved A Tale for the Time Being so much. So the description of The Book of Form and Emptiness is After the tragic death of his beloved musician father, 14-year-old Benny O begins to hear voices. The voices belong to the things in his house: a sneaker, a broken Christmas ornament, a piece of wilted lettuce. Though Benny doesn't understand what these things are saying, he can sense their emotional tone. Some are pleasant, a gentle hum or coo, but others are snide, angry, and full of pain. When his mother, Annabelle, develops a hoarding problem, the voices grow more clamorous. At first, Benny tries to ignore them, but soon the voices follow him outside the house, onto the street, and at school, driving him at last to seek refuge in the silence of a large public library, where objects are well behaved and know how to speak in whispers. There, Benny discovers a strange new world where things happen, in quotes. He falls in love with a mesmerizing street artist and a smug pet ferret who uses the library as her performance space. He meets a homeless philosopher poet who encourages him to ask important questions and find his own voice amongst the many. And he meets his very own book, a talking thing, who narrates Benny's life and teaches him to listen to the things that truly matter. My concern with this is that it will be kind of a little preachy and a little on the nose with its messaging. I feel like those were the parts that I was a little iffy on in A Tale for the Time Being, but I think there was enough in that book that I absolutely loved to counteract it. So I think it'll really depend on how that stuff is handled, how prevalent it is in this book. But I am kind of excited to, at some point, dive back into Ruth Ozecki's work because, once again, I've said it 5 million times, but A Tale for the Time Being really worked for me, and I'm just surprised I haven't picked up anything else by her since then. So that's gonna do it for this video. Those are some of the books from the past few years that have come out in the past few years that I have not picked up yet, but I definitely should and want to at some point. I hope you enjoyed learning about them. Maybe you kind of discovered a new book that you want to check out. Maybe you have read all of these and are really excited for me to read them and talk about them in the future. If you did like this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.